Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, happy Friday. Welcome to the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. I'm Jim Rhoads. This is my lovely wife and business partner, Michelle. We are coming to you live from Twin Falls, Idaho, and we have guests from all over the country sitting in the wings waiting to talk to you about Recon. Just want to give a quick update. We got the LHPH Summit coming up in 2 weeks. That starts on Thursday the 12th. We'll be there broadcasting live on Friday the 13th. And let's, like I say, Friday the 13th. I like to joke about I'm not superstitious.
I'm going to have to come up with something fun
but
for
I'm
that.
a little bit stitious, right? That's the joke. So we'll be out there on Friday the 13th broadcasting live, and then the conference wraps up on Saturday the 14th. But yeah, glad to have you folks here. I know you're waiting to hear from our panelists.
So I'm pit crew, so I'm going to head backstage, welcome everybody, and we're going to get started. So do you want to kind of talk about the topic? And I'll bring
Yeah, I'm going to, before we bring in our panelists, I'm going to just kind of give an overview of the idea and refer back to, we did a poll a couple of weeks ago and we asked dealers, how do you make your recon decision? Like, how far do you go? Do you go to 50%, 75%? We may get a chance to show that on the screen, but you can find the poll in the BHPH Success Facebook page and see the actual results over there. But when those results came back, it suggested, wow, people are really going a long way on this Recon. And when I consider how expensive cars are now, and then we're going all this distance on Recon, then I know what the outcome can be. I know what that means to bank accounts. So I'm interested in breaking down kind of how that works. I'm going to bring our guests in one at a time. Here comes Nik Dumin. Oh, she's bringing them all in. So we're gonna say hi to everybody. So you got on the screen, I'm assuming everybody that's viewing is seeing the screen the same way I am. We have in the upper right there, that's Nik Dumin from Tyrone, Pennsylvania. And Nik is somebody we've known for a good stretch. He comes from a background of being a tech and now owns a service business, and then something prompted him to become a buy here, pay here dealer. So, you know, there's a story there to be told. And then we got in the lower left there, that's Rich Pratt from North Florida, just outside of Ocala, a place called Anthony, Florida. Thanks for being here, Rich. And Rich was on our show once before. You can search his name in the YouTube playlist and find the episode where he appeared when we talked service once before. And then in the lower right, many of you will recognize Chad Randash from Montana. He's got locations in Bozeman and where else, Chad?
Billings.
Billings, you said that, yeah. So glad to have you guys here. We're going to talk about service. And first, I want to really get an idea kind of what you guys do in terms of warranty. And Nik, you might just give a little bit about your background, explain what you do about warranty and kind of how that affects decision making in Recon.
Yeah. So I started just in the service business, and like you said, and kind of transitioned into used car sales and then buy here, pay here. But early on, we did just 3-month, 3,000-mile warranties on through a third party, and eventually transitioned into reinsurance, and now we offer a 12-month, 12,000-mile limited powertrain on every unit we sell, cash.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm going to take a minute before you go any further, and I'll explain for our audience so we can kind of cover it one time. On the reinsurance side, a lot of dealers who be listening might be new and not really familiar with the reinsurance. When we understand that if we offer a reinsurance product as a service contract, for example, we can do that as a reinsured product of our own, or we could use a third party for a service contract. In that case, the customer chooses, right? They may or may not be in on the service contract. It's their option. The warranty is really what I want to focus on today. So you mentioned you moved to a 12-month, 12,000-mile warranty. That means customer doesn't pay for it. You include it.
Correct.
Right? And so that's on there from the time that they take delivery. And just for my information, what kind of deductible do you currently have on that?
We're using a $200 deductible.
Okay, nice. And then, Rich, you want to give a little bit about your background and what you do in terms of warranty?
Yeah, we've, I was around buy here, pay here growing up and in an earlier part of my life, and started this place about 11 years ago. And we extensively recon our cars, everything. Honestly, contractually, our clients leave as is. That doesn't mean that we don't warranty cars, because we warranty stuff all the time, believe me. Especially when it's legitimate. We do the right thing here, so don't misunderstand. But I do reserve the right, if someone's being unreasonable, to say, look, I've considered implementing like a lubricated parts, internal lubricated parts, powertrain warranty. I'm honestly about this close to doing it. Just haven't really pulled the trigger. It seems like every time I turn around and I think about doing it, something keeps me, an instance keeps me from doing it. So I don't want to sit here and say we don't warranty cars, because we do. We just don't do it contractually.
I follow. So I think, and for our conversation here today, we're really going to talk more about recon and how you go about making the decision before the customer ever sees the car. And so, that just kind of helps us know how you might approach that. So, Chad, what about you guys? What do you do in the way of a warranty?
We do a 2-year, 24,000 powertrain. We keep on looking over the list to see if there's items that are failing. Like we always have done, the engine, transmission, starter, alternator, water pump, and we've just added recently the fuel pump, because we'll see that will fail, and so we just will add that into the warranty. And if there's other things that we're always looking at to see if that those are things that are going to be just an issue with the clients, we'll add it to it just to try to streamline that a little better.
Gotcha. So, Chad didn't say air conditioning because he's far enough north they can get by without air conditioning. Right. So, and maybe Nick, you too. But so that's part of how we think about those things. So, Nick, take me through this. Like I said, I prepared you guys for the idea that I wanted to get super granular today, because when I think about, you guys are out there buying used cars. I know you also buy some remanufactured or rebuilt title stuff, and so. That aside, I mean, we know that's a whole different layer of body work. But when I'm just thinking, if we focus on the mechanical side, like, how do you make a judgment about how far to go? When that car comes in, you have the folks assess it, and they're going to come back to you with a quote. Like, how do you make the judgment about how far you go? Let's start with something simple like brake pads. Like, how bad the brakes have to be?
Yeah. So, I mean, in Pennsylvania, we have state inspections. So, I mean, there's minimum requirements there. Just for example, on a brake pad would be state minimum would be 230 seconds. So we on our used car checklist list ours at 430 seconds. So if they're 430 seconds of an inch or less, we replace them for that example. But we do rotors as well, like along with the brakes. Like if we can machine them, we machine them. We have a brake lathe still try to in our used car department to try to cut down on rotor costs a little bit. But if we're in the rust belt, so a lot of times you're buying rotors and stuff too. But that's on feel as well, right? So if you're driving the car and the brakes are shaking, we put them on. So
So before you go any further there, I want to have Michelle show that poll. We did the poll, and then we'll come back to you and kind of see how you fit in this category. But the poll that we did on Facebook a few weeks ago really just talks about how far do you go? Like, how do you make the decision about when you stop on that? So I think she's trying to get it to load, maybe an internet thing. But I don't know if you can read that. I'm having trouble reading it myself. But basically we said 100%. Let me read the question. It says, not counting body work, how much of what you can identify do you actually repair when reconditioning newly acquired inventory? This would be an overall average. And I said, note, 100% would be every single thing you find, including maintenance such as belts, hoses, filters, I can't quite read that one, maybe tires, brake pads, etc. So I'm just really saying, if we found it and it was imperfect, we fixed it. So to me, that would be 100%. I was surprised to see that nearly 30% of the people said they go all the way, 100%. The bigger group was at 57%, said more than 75% of the way. So I think you answered the poll, Nick. I don't remember, which group you would have been in, but where would you say you land on that?
I think I put myself in the 75% group. Just only because I feel like you could just recon a car forever and never stop. Probably, like there's always something else, especially in our area.
Sure.
With a $5,000 or $6,000 car. So 75 or better. Just I have a hard time saying 100%.
Okay. No, I follow. What about you, Rich? I mean, where would you land in that group?
Probably close to 100. We put brake pads probably on 80% of the cars. If they're not obviously new, when they come through, we put brake pads. Same, like Nik was saying, brake shake down here. I don't know if it's different around the country, but we probably put front rotors on 80% of the cars because they're shaking. They're warped. It's, they get hot. Florida, it's tropical. It rains. People run through a mud puddle and their rotors warp or whatever. Technically, my philosophy is this. I could probably do a whole episode on minor recon blunders that we've had over the years that have turned into a major problem. And I could tell you some pretty funny stories about things that have happened to cars because someone literally forgot to reset the oil life on a car. Like we changed the oil. We did the oil change, but the tech forgot to reset the oil life, and people have overfilled cars because they thought that's how you got it from 16% higher and everything else. And so, the motivation is you never want to sell a bad car as a human being to a person. I know that I don't, but at the same time, in these days and times, boy, I could tell you some doozies about small details that we left, that we didn't mean to overlook, but were overlooked, and it turned into a major problem in the office. And every time that's happened to me, I've taken it as a life lesson.
Okay. Well, so Chad, what about you guys? Are you 75% or above?
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you go that and why. Like, what's the motivation there?
So body work is hit or miss, and so the body is probably the least, in the sense like if there's some paint that's flaked off or there's some maybe a dent here or there that isn't catastrophic, but what we're looking for is we're looking for ideas that the cars we're having to go longer on the note, and so I'm trying to do everything that is going to make that client make the payment. And if the $400 part is the issue at some time down the line or whatever, I'd rather get that taken care of and have the client focus on the payments.
Okay.
And of course, when they're out of the car, then there's other options that they can do, and so they can. Every time that car's down and it's a few days or whatever, that's a bad deal for the client relationship and the collection relationship. So
sure.
And just to jump on this, so I recently took over my brother's store about 2 years ago in April of 21, and we do things at this location in Bozeman totally different. And my brother Brian was kind of doing it the same way that my dad had done it. And so his good technicians down in Billings, great crew, but the shadow falls from the top. So, he's buying a $3,000-$4,000 car, maybe pre-COVID, and he's putting $1,200 maybe $100 into the car. So when that's fine, and then the car's getting sold for whatever, but then what we did is we dug into his numbers, and so he's had two categories after the fact: the warranty, of course, but then the two other ones were after sale, anything from 0 to 31 days, where the car was, and he kind of blended that as a goodwill deal. So after sale goodwill, and that was $40 something thousand on average a month. I mean, it was, he's spending this crazy amount of money to he's got 800 accounts or whatever he's got, and it's just blowing him up. And when we took that over, now we're at 530 accounts in that store. So we're off by 300 accounts, but our after sale, 0 to 31 days, anything mechanical that the client is having an issue with, we'll just take care of. We want to start the relationship on the right foot. We missed it, or we didn't miss it, and the client just needed 200, 300 more miles before that issue came up. But we want to fix that. And then after the fact, a goodwill of whatever, that's a good paying client. And we talk to collections and, hey, we're just going to handle this for you. You're on your way. But now we're sitting at around that $3,500 mark. Wow. So the relationship is in my brother's case, and we would talk about this ad nauseum a year after I did this. And I'm showing him these numbers and I'm like, if I recondition that car in the beginning, at least I got a chance to price it and recuperate that money back. Where after the sale, that's just pure goodwill. I mean, it's gone. It's you're hoping the client's going to, make the distance or whatever. But that money that is spent is gone. There's no recuperation of that money. So for us, that's a better philosophy to we go pretty deep into our recon, and we've got a fairly inexpensive internal cost, and I'm not putting 40, 50, 60% markup on, an independent dealer is a lot different than like a franchise where they make 60% of their money off of their shop. Right. And we're just kind of at a break even just to make sure that works. So sure. That's not the money maker, although it's a huge expense when you have techs and the space and everything else in there. But that's right. More our philosophy.
Okay, so did I understand you right? You say your average recon is about $3,500 per car now. Is that the number?
Yeah.
Okay,
now that's skewed somewhat because where we live in Montana, my friend Nick there, he lives in Pennsylvania where it's got an auction because I got another good friend Bill who's out there, and they got auctions everywhere, right? Yeah. Where we've got one auction in the state, and it's really tough to get the amount of cars. So I've got my transportation. So we're about $2,800 true recon in there. The 35, I put the transport costs in.
Gotcha. And then what about your what age class are you roughly buying? Age, model year, and miles?
Yeah, we'll go up to probably 4 model years back on certain cases. Those are a lot less on our recons, but it's a 10-year-old car plus that. I love Ford Tauruses. My clients don't like them as much. I love the Taurus. I love the Impalas. It's the same 12, 13 cars. A lot of SUVs and stuff, but very little trucks. Although our clients would love the trucks, it's just the cost, the warranty costs are really good performing asset on our static pull trucks, but they're just super expensive to.
Yeah, of course. Tie up a lot of cash per contract. Yeah. So Rich, what would you guess your average recon is running?
About $1,800.
Okay.
It's we're buying. It seems like the quality of the cars that are available right now, wholesale. I think everyone will agree isn't quite what it once was. I think a lot of the new car stores are holding on to the stuff that needs a little bit less.
Yeah.
We're buying 10-year-old. Again, as he mentioned, Impalas, Tauruses, stuff like that. 120 to mid 100s. I'll buy high 100s if it's a truck or a Tahoe or something like that. That's a little more resilient, or maybe an Asian car or whatever. But it's definitely seems like it seems like even when you buy a car that you think needs nothing, it needs you get it home and it needs more. It's almost like the detail and retail car that you used to be able to buy pretty regularly is gone, and so that's definitely added a lot to our recon. If I'm not mistaken, probably everyone else's as well. I think everyone's experiencing the same thing.
I don't. Nick is such a great buyer. I think he buys them really perfect. I think his average recon's around $12. Am I right, Nick?
Yeah. Our model's a little bit different. It really depends on. We buy a lot of insurance, total losses and rebuild them. So those recon numbers are obviously a little bit higher, but a clean title car, our recon's right around $2,000. And similar to you guys as well, we buy the same stuff, 10-year-old stuff, like a lot of Subarus, a lot of Impalas, buy a lot of Chevy Cruisers. That might be a hot take, but being in the salvage repair business, we have parts cars, and we got lots of parts to fix whatever breaks. So that's useful in our realm, especially with controlling warranty claim costs and recon costs as well.
So Nik, what's the most difficult decision that you find yourself making in recon?
Most difficult, I would say, rust. Like how long is it going to last? You got a rusty subframe on a car, and you think this thing's got to make a 3 or 4 year term. Will it make it, or am I going to be, having to explain to a customer in a year why there's a hole in their subframe and they just bought it, 12 months ago. It's very, very unpredictable. I'd say that's the biggest challenge we face. I think of two cars right now that are in recon that I'm just like, I got them on the back burner, and I just don't know what to do with them because I don't know if they're going to make it, or if I should just wholesale them and hopefully break even, or buy subframes and put in them. It's a challenging topic.
Before I go back to the others, talk to me about like suspension work. Like how much, when it comes to these, things like, control arms and all the stuff in the suspension, like how bad has it got to be before you're going to replace all the stuff?
Yeah, any variants. I mean, dry rot, loose ball joint, tie rod. If it's got any play in it, we replace it. It's not something to mess around with, in my opinion. Especially people, driving 80-mile-an-hour sleds down the highway. It's a good break or whatever, and if you can't steer the car, it can be deadly, and the liability is just not worth it, in my opinion. Especially, with a state inspection that's heavily audited, and there's licensing issues there if you make a mistake like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Rich? What are you guys doing in the way of like suspension work? Or first, what do you find is the most difficult decision for you to make? Like you should do it, you don't want to do it, it's a tough call. Like what's the one that gives you the most trouble?
Probably for me, I mean, there's a difference between oil seepage and an oil leak. Seepage is, I bought this car, I put it on the lift, there's a slight amount of, it's not perfectly dry, let's say, right between the engine and transmission, but it's also not pouring oil on the ground. Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't mean that maybe there wasn't a repair made previously that someone didn't clean up, et cetera. Mm-hmm. We kind of wash them off and clean them up and drive them 20 or 30 miles and come back and revisit it. And sometimes it's like, man, 80% of the cars that I buy aren't perfectly dry underneath, right. But that we'll never send a car out that's leaking. Obviously, that's a recipe for disaster. But making the determination whether to fix a maybe tiny little seepage that's difficult to access. I don't know. We do fix a lot of that. I'm not saying we don't, but it definitely is. That's where it becomes more difficult. On the suspension side, we don't have the rust belt down here, thankfully. Obviously, if we drive a car and it's clunking, when we run over bumps, we pretty much correct that every time, whatever it takes. Okay. As well, if there's ball joint boots ripped, we're pretty much changing that, or the entire lower control arm these days most of the time. But for the most part, we're looking for obvious play in a ball joint, in a bushing, dry rot, as he was saying. Sometimes we'll take a pry bar, physically just take a pry bar, and if something's kind of clunking and we're looking for it, we'll kind of make sure there's not excessive play in a bushing or something like that. Try to, I don't think we probably have as many problems in Florida as a lot of other regions of the country for a lot of reasons with that. But mm-hmm. That's my standard. No clunks, and definitely nothing unsafe. No.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that goes without saying. I think everybody you see on the screen here, most of the dealers we know, are certainly going to deal with safety stuff. We're not going to be trying to put a car out there that's unsafe. When I was a dealer, I had cars with oil leaks. I used to give the customer a bucket with every car, so they could catch that oil in the truck. No, it's a joke. I didn't really do that. I'm kidding. So, Chad, what about you? And what do you guys find are kind of the tough things? I hear that you're going quite a ways with Recon. Is there some of the stuff that's tough, like timing belt or timing chain noise, or like how what are the problem decisions for you?
Well, I think I just want to step back here a little bit. So when our process, when we bring this in, and again, I'm going to kind of refer back to where Nik is at in Pennsylvania. We looked all over kind of the country, and I thought Pennsylvania was one of the strictest and well put together when they've got their yearly inspections. And so I got a copy of how the inspectors, what they were looking for. They went down to even the headlights being, is it straight, is it pointed up? They were very thorough in doing that. So we use that as a model to kind of put together our checklist of our inspection. And we went from like a 60-point inspection to a 144-point inspection. So our process, when that vehicle comes in, we've got 2 or 3 dedicated inspectors, and so they will check all the fluids, check kind of the safety of the vehicle, and then take it for this predetermined 40-mile test drive.
Nice.
And going through this litany of this checklist on everything that happens there. Then once it gets back to the shop, then they'll rack the car, and then we finish out the rest of the inspection. That's it. So if we're talking suspension and like a CV boot, right? If that boot's ripped, it's getting replaced. We've got a zero tolerance on play on the suspension, tie rods or anything like that. Again, I'm playing. I like cards, and I like Magic, and I like 21, and I like how the house in Vegas seems to win. And there's an advantage to that. So I'm playing more that type of game where if the car were to go south with the client after we've made it a really good car and I get it back, it's so hard for me to find cars in this area that I just can't. I need to recycle those cars. Those cars need to be recycled in this area of the world. So I need that car back, and I need it to start out to be a good car if we're going to recycle it. So that's the theory going into every one that we're going through. And if when we're looking at a low balance on the thing, and the client's saying, this is a really good car, and they owe $500 or $900 or $2,500, whatever it is, they're like, this thing's awesome. Right. Sometimes I second guess that, and I'm like, shit, I'd like to. I wish the car was in not as good a shape, but we have a lot of payoffs, true payoffs in this world. I got very little repo. And we track the repos. If it's a mechanical issue, is it due to the abuse of whatever the client's never shuts off the car and it's putting 50,000 miles on in the car in 6 months, or is it the 20,000 miles that were kind of between 15 and 20 that expected?
Yeah. So obviously, if I buy a car from you, though, I'm expecting I'm going to have my maintenance responsibility, right? I'm going to be responsible for.
I'm gonna get some disagreement from the dealers. I just think that in this world, I got that client once or twice, right? And I want them to be out to not do business with me. That's our philosophy here, right? There's no shortage of people in this world with bad credit, and as we go 6 months or a year down the line, I think the pool's going to get even deeper, right? Yeah. So I think more people are going to have some issues, right, with the economy.
So you just mean that you're going to.
I want them to flip through this, and the best advertising is to say, hey, if their credit score goes to 650, we want to handle their mechanical issues. In that sense, that if they're driving the car, I want that car to last the note with very little pushback. The maintenance side of, I think that's buy here, pay here today. It's what I'm experiencing. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's our philosophy on what we do. And when my dad was doing this 26 years ago, or 30 years ago, it was as is basically, right? It was this is how this works, and we fix it. And if whatever goes wrong, if it's not covered under the warranty, it's your concern. And there was just a lot of repos doing that way. So everybody does this different, and my way is not the right way. It's just right for me. So we are looking for that car to go the distance and make it. And I take great responsibility if there's an issue that we missed, and even if we didn't miss it and it just was at that fine line 2 years into it, if I can help them out in there, we built this in such a profit margin and everything else that there's a lot of goodwill that can go back to the
So let me ask you just a quick thing on the warranty. How long have you been doing the 24-month warranty? And
ever since I started.
I'm sorry?
Ever since I started it. Now I reinsure that, and we're I think there's some areas there that's 30-40% of the profit of that margin is what should be spent. We're about a 52% is what we spend on that warranty cost. So if we collect X, we're spending 52 cents on the dollar on the warranty.
Wow. Yeah, that's really strong. That's good information. So yeah, I think a lot of dealers who don't yet have that kind of warranty, and even if you think about moving from a 3-month, $3,000 to a 24-month deal, like, we'd love to bring you back one day and talk more in depth about that piece of it, because most dealers are thinking, how long do I want to cover? Well, some of them look to cover the initial window, that 3-month thing. Some of them look to cover their risk, which these days is more than 12 months typically. Used to be when I was a dealer, our risk period was pretty short, but now it's, cost of car being what it is, and obviously at your Recon level, your breakout on that is going to be pretty long. So it makes sense that you're covering that from the warranty side.
I think a couple of key points is, the gauge is just on the brake thickness, right? So we're not guessing. We've got the gauge that'll say it's red, yellow, or green, right? And so we need that in green. Anything less than that, I need to put pads on it. Same thing with the tires. So, a 5-year-old tire, the tire shops are smoking us now. That if it's over 5 years, they're trying to sell stuff. So even if the tire's not dry rotted, it's a good tire, it's whatever, right? It's got good tread depth in there. The tire shops are going to be hitting them, the client, saying, hey, this is a garbage tire. It's over 5 years old. You need to replace the tire. You can't just replace one. You got to replace all 4. Well, who do you think the client's calling next? Right? They're calling, you son of a gun, you da, 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 da. So we just handle it. And my people, they get beaten up, right? And so anything I can do to try to relieve some of that stress off of them, maybe I'm probably over, in my 20 groups, they're going, Randash, you're spending so much money on this Recon, right? But I've got a low repossession rate, right? And I can tell you that repos will come because they can't afford it. And I'll also tell you that they'll come because the mechanical issues have worn the client out. Sure. And that's what we're trying to eliminate, is that one problem.
Yeah, understood. So we'll wrap up here in a minute or two. Rich, any closing thoughts in terms of, if you're talking to a new dealer, and I'm sure you are today, then what would you be recommending about how far to go on Recon?
I'm gonna parrot what he was just talking about. It's I think there's a whole lot less people in this world today that are able to maintain their vehicle for a plethora of reasons, specifically our clientele, honestly. And so in a way, you're just trying to bulletproof the car, if you will. It's there's no question that he touched on a little bit. I had a person come in one time from a big box store that had a Dodge Durango that told me they needed $1,500 worth of brake work, for instance, and they're yelling and screaming at us.
Sure. Oh, he froze up. So before I come to you, Nick, I just got to put a quick mention in there. Rich used the word plethora, and Michelle and I are grateful because that means a lot. That means a lot. So,
it is. It's just, I learned this business from a mentor of mine that started in the 60s, and I'm still good friends with his son. And I tell him all the time, we're not selling cars to the same people your dad sold cars to. We're just not. And that's where we're at in 2023. And that's something that you need to be prepared for if you want to do this long term.
Yeah, it's a shifting world. So Nick, closing thoughts from you in terms of how far to go, where to stop, what to not recon? Any ideas that you can help some new dealers paint some boundaries?
Yeah, similar to what Rich and Chad said there. I mean, even down to the air filters, the cabin filters, the wiper blades. The first oil change they take it to Firestone or Jiffy Lube or whatever, they're hitting them with a list. They're pulling all that stuff out, and if it's not done, buddy, you're gonna hear about it.
Sure. Have a hard time getting your keys back.
Yeah. So, I would just say that that's our main focus is just building the best cars that we can, and there was a time early on, I sold 7 cars in a week, and 2 weeks later, 5 of them were sitting there, and I was trying to figure out how to get them all back in for warranty repairs, and I had a full service bays, and and at that point I was like, man, we got to do something different, and from there on, we just whatever they need. If we fix anything that's not gonna last a year, and that's our goal, and the better your cars are, the easier they are to sell. As Chad said, the lower your repossession rates are, and it just works. It makes sense.
Yeah, well, we're going to wrap up there. I'd love to have you guys come back sometime, because we're really just want to talk about the whole. You guys touched on the trust factor, right? We talk a lot in White Hat Way about trust, and you guys are working to create some level of trust in your community, establishing.
You didn't have Chad.
Public relations. What's that? Wrap up. I thought because I was
No.
Parting thoughts, Chad.
No, this is a great panel. Thank you very much for the invite today.
I think it's been, really good information. I appreciate you gentlemen making time.
I love to do horror stories. We'll have Rich Pratt come back.
I'll talk horror stories.
I can tell you.
Yeah, for sure. Look for that in the future. Maybe a Halloween episode. That'll be fun.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So thanks, gentlemen. We appreciate you making time. If you want to stick around in the backstage area, we can put you backstage, and we'll wrap up the show, and then we can say a proper goodbye if you got a few more minutes. Just stand by. So thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate you listening in. I think what you heard there is that these folks make a decision to spend the money in the reconditioning because it pays off for them on the account side, right? They're able to have a happy customer who's not having to take money out of their own pocket. Now they're able to. It also, in my mind, allows us to approach the collections relationship a little differently when we know that the car's in good shape. We know we're handling the things on the cars, and now we can kind of separate conversations about the payment, because that car's being tended to. So just different ideas. And I think it's also worth mentioning that what we see is that dealers kind of they progress as they grow and funds allow. Then they shift the business model. It's natural to see dealers increase their term of their warranty, et cetera, as they mature. So if you're a brand new dealer and you think, gosh, how can I afford a 24-month? Well, maybe not yet. Maybe you build a strategy to get to a 24-month. But I think we hope what we did today has helped you understand the thought process behind why they do what they do. And so again, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back with you Monday, and then look for us next Friday in San Diego.